A lot of times what I talk about here, as crazy as some of it appears, is the result of a lot of time and effort put in tossing over these concepts. And I kind of try not to present them until I put in enough hours myself with it, or have sort of come to a satisfying point with it for myself, to satisfy myself. But, and of course it's always ongoing and subject to change with new information. But some of the most dangerous shit you can talk about, and we're going to talk about it, is has nothing to do with politics or the jibber jabber or anything to do with the movements of men. And it has everything to do with your divinity and what you can do with it, and what they try to keep you from doing with it. I'm going to try to stay on track here because there's a lot of examples in my own life that led me to understand this, starting when I was like a small child. And older people like myself will, if you remember magazines, a lot of magazines, periodicals, newspapers would run these ads for like some kind of art program or art school, saying, "Can you draw this?" And it'll be the picture of like a rabbit, like an Easter Bunny style rabbit, something really basic. You know, if you can draw this, then submit your work to blah 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 blah. That's where it begins, like this whole thing, for me. And my story's a little weird, but I'm gonna just try to keep to like the whole general idea of this whole thing. Your divinity, those who have it, and as we're starting to discover, there's a large part of the population doesn't have it and are more like system assets. So if you have divinity, that means you have creation power, as the divine is the divine creator, the head creator, the creator of all. You have that same power, or it's really not a power. It would be considered a power because it's not something people know we can do, or that we do when made in his image that way. So anyway, being able to create is directly tied to divinity. A lot of people can't do it. And those that can, probably most likely have a connection with their divine higher self, or divine larger group, whatever you want to call it, the God consciousness, the combined consciousness, the source, the cloud library. It's called a lot of things. So what it is these, when you, how do I even start this? Your thoughts create the solid objects around you. It creates the reality around you. If you're a creator and you have imagination, you can create this more solidly. Trying to get out of the way where I don't have someone walking directly behind me. It's kind of weird. You're like, people will get so close to you or get so close behind you that you can smell their breath and their aftershave and stuff. It's fucking weird. But then, you know, when you let them pass you and you're behind them, a lot of times they spend all their time nervously looking behind them because now you're behind them and there's some kind of fear there. It's asinine. So basically, as creators, what we can do is actually shape, not just shape, but we can create the world around us. And those who are really good at it can do this with much greater ease. And I'm going to give you like an example. This is just hypothetical of how this works and how you can do it. Yeah, I picked a bad time to come out walking. Yeah, see, I'm literally kind of trapped. It's all right. I'll go over here for a minute. Okay, well, maybe not over here. Okay. All right. Say you have like you live on a creek or a dam in your backyard, or creek, and you rely on having that waterway clear so that you can, whatever it is people do that have a dam or a creek for. Say a creek's clogged up. What you do is in your mind, you would imagine some kind of machine that could clear that debris. It doesn't have to be a real machine, it doesn't have to exist, it's something in your imagination. And the more of an imagination you have, the more efficient you can make this machine. So, you know, I would imagine a giant, like, sort of logging kind of tank. You design it in any color you want, picture it in your mind. That's why this whole thing lately about people not being able to picture something in their mind is very important, and that's what has clued us into the fact that possibly some of these people are assets put in the test to make the test harder, or have that test at all. So you need this waterway clear, right? In your mind, you imagine this machine, you know, that someone can drive or something, and it just goes through the water like a boat kind of tank, and you imagine it pushing the debris away, you know, moving the debris. Yeah, I came up with this example because I was thinking about it because I live across from a canal, and it was getting gummed up by a rainstorm we had recently. So what you do is you imagine this thing, you think about it. You don't have to think about it for too long, think about it for as long as you want, but just imagine that happening, imagine that scenario. What I like to do is I like to, like a computer, I run things in the background. So what I would do is I would say, all right, I'm putting that trawler out there, and that trawler is huge. It's got, you know, big claws to pick up debris, or it just pushes debris or flattens debris or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to leave that running, and I'm going to think on other things or just go about my day. But in the background, this trawler is moving through the water, and it's pushing all this stuff, the trawler you imagined, working in the way you imagined it working, seeing it like a movie in your mind, pushing that water away. And then I would just go about my day and occasionally check in to see how my trawler was doing. And checking in meaning I'd imagine where it would be at that point, or maybe even imagine the same thing over again, where this trawler moving through the water and pushing away debris. This sounds retarded, I understand, but a lot of this stuff does. Only because, no serious study has ever been done into how this kind of stuff works. No serious study that, when I say serious study, I mean a guy that went to school and spent a lot of money to get a piece of paper that he hangs on his wall, which enslaves him to whatever the whims of that institution are. And if he steps out of line, he loses that piece of paper, and then how's he going to pay all those student loans? That kind of professional study. So you imagine the trawler. It's going through, it's pushing all this stuff. And what the idea is through imagining this, and there's no determinable length of time this has to be done. When you imagine this trawler too, here's what helps, the detail. The more detailed you can imagine this thing, like it's a light gray, it's a two-seater. You want to imagine the more important details. How is it destroying or clearing that area? How's it clearing that dam out? Is it just, maybe it's putting some kind of chemical into the water and it's dissolving it. Maybe it's just using some sort of a claw that's taking it and breaking it in half. Whatever it is, with as much detail as you can. Imagine that. Imagine the color. Imagine the guy driving it. Give him a name. Fucking give him a backstory. The more detail you put into it, the more hard value it has here against things. And the idea is that by doing this, it will just magically clear, or seemingly magically clear. This will help to move the debris along because you're doing it in your mind. But by being creative and imagining this thing, it has real world consequences. That's exactly how this shit works. That's exactly why they need us. That's exactly why they use us to do things. That's exactly why they collect kids when they're young who are good, have an aptitude for art. And then they take them into a basement and do weird shit to them. Because they want to get those people that have the ability, like, you know, for me, my personal thing, I showed at a very young age an aptitude for art. I was pretty crazy, you know, the stuff I was doing at my age. I had a lot of, like, accolades or local success, or I was in newspapers and all this other kind of stuff, which in the 70s was kind of crazy that was like a real celebrity, you know what I mean? I was admitted into the Great Arts of America. I had my work in their annual book awards. I had a storybook that I wrote and illustrated that was put into the school library. Some of my work is hung in different offices of the school district because they could say, hey, look what a student did. Because what I would do, and I'm just going to give you one example, we had to draw, and it wasn't great, it was shitty, it was kid stuff, but it was better than the other shitty kid stuff. Because what I would do is, for this one example, we had to draw the school building we were in. Our art teacher took us outside, and we all sat around with the pen and paper, and we drew freehand the schoolhouse that we went to school in. Now, most kids, I mean, you're lucky you get a shape. Maybe you get the schoolhouse and they'll put a couple trees. My shit had fucking rust on the pipes. I had the school itself, instead of just being one color, I made the shingles that made up the siding on the school. Some of the shingles were cracked. I included that. I included all the signage, and the signage that had rust on it where you couldn't read the words, I included that. It was pretty fucking detailed. It wasn't well done, but I was replicating everything I see. And that became of interest to the arts department. And I remember being taken out of class to go talk to these people. And I was told about how important it was, because I used to draw a lot of things I liked, Star Wars, superheroes, shit like that. And they were telling me how important it was to create your own thing. And I remember years later thinking, were they saying, oh yeah, because if you create your own thing, you can make a lot of money with your own IP? No. They were looking to see how good I could create to do stuff like the fucking trawler, that example I gave. Because if you can create something in your mind with your imagination, that has a bearing on this illusory energy world that's around us. And if you look at why they collect people or use people for things, they don't have this ability. Evil doesn't have the ability. The only ones that have that ability are us, those here with divinity. They don't want us to know about this stuff. This is a very closely guarded secret in the little gay societies would butt fuck each other. And the whole thing is, your life, you're being told you're a mouse constantly. Oh, you're a mouse, you're a mouse, you're a mouse. You're not a mouse, you're a fucking lion. But they want you to think you're a mouse. Because if you remember you're a lion, you're going to fucking eat them and this whole thing's going to be over. You're way more powerful than these people and these forces that are holding you in place. Way more powerful. And a lot of the world, when you start to look into this stuff, you know, you think, oh, well, they're farming humans for organs, or they need the adrenochrome from the kids. No. They want the creation. They want this creation power that they don't have. The way they work it now to get us to create the kind of world they want is they put things in society, suggestions, or they move society in one way, or they, on the news every night, you know, you'll watch the news and you'll be saying like, oh wow, people are dying from this COVID thing, right? So then in your mind, you start imagining all the imagery you've seen that's consistent with this kind of thing, like from movies or whatever, of people dying or people, all the details you can. And then what that does is in turn, it creates the actual world to be like that. So they use you to create the world they want by making you think the world is already that way. And they do this, they just extrapolate that in every direction for everything. Those that can create, they're using them to create the world they want. Now, this whole thing with the jibber jab, I never, you know, I think first of all, a lot of it is obfuscated by their own dark magic. Like, that's why you can't, like, a lot of things, your inner tuning fork will go off, like, that's exactly what's happening, you just know it. But with this thing, it's hard to figure out. A lot of people can't figure it out, like what the ultimate point is. Yes, control, yes, you know, depopulation, there's those things, but all the things that you can attribute to the jibber jabber could be done much more easily. Yes, you have to choose it for them to gain some sort of karmic kickback. It's much more valuable as a karmic kickback for them in their dark power if you choose this rather than them just coming around slaughtering people. They wouldn't get the same juice out of it, you know what I mean? So, but nothing really sat with me all that well about this stuff. And nothing still does, but what made me think about it is this whole thing with them injecting nanotechnology into your bodies. Look up the Hydra. It's like a little half biological, half technological kind of little thing that are in the shots that hijack some parts of your neural pathways, which kind of made me think right away, like, what are they doing up in the brain? To boilerplate this fucking thing, what they're trying to do is bypass having us have to imagine these things and then eventually creating the society that they want. And they're going to go right to controlling this ability, this power, this imaginary power, themselves by hijacking our brain. So it'll be much more efficient. They can get their stuff done quicker because they've been really impatient, especially a lot of the older rabbis. They want this end of world thing to come. And I remember seeing a video where they cornered Netanyahu one time after a press conference, and they were basically saying, and you know, without going through exactly what was being said, they were saying that let's hurry up with this Messiah thing. They want to push forward biblical revelation. They're tired of waiting. They need the Messiah. They want the, whatever it is. I think you get 10,000 goy slaves each or 100,000 goy slaves each. Whether that's the reason they want to push this forward. So they're rushing. And that's why you see a lot of overreach, make a lot of mistakes. But I believe that is because they wouldn't put so much work and energy and effort into this thing. I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. It's beyond science fiction, dystopia, sci-fi channel movie kind of thing. It's fucking crazy. Unless they were getting a super fucking big bang out of it. The effort they put in is usually about 5% of what they think they're getting back. They don't do nothing, they don't do anything to break even. Whether it's some kind of false flag or some kind of way to change society or whatever bullshit they're trying to get across. Their whole MO is to work as little as possible for the biggest kickback, using as little resources as possible, because they don't have a lot of resources, and there's really not that many of them. When the rubber fucking hits the road, there's way more of us. And everything is about manipulating us. We have an ability they don't have. And they're using our ability to create the world they want. But instead of doing it over decades, they're trying to rush the process by just hijacking our brains and using this ability directly. Or at least that's what seems the most reasonable to me, more so than depopulation or, you know what I mean? Because there's ways they could have did that that's a lot more economical and with a lot less blowback. I mean, the way it is now, I mean, they're pushing in a way so that it could become very dangerous for them. You know, we've seen history is littered with the severed heads of those who overreached. So they want to be careful. You know, they don't want to push too far. But at the same time, they still have their foot on the gas. And again, this is just a theory. But it's one worth exploring, especially when you do more research on exactly what's in the shots and how they work. MNRA replication. It's so bizarre because if people even looked at it for like even a couple minutes, right away to the most rational thinking person, red flags would go off. And it used to drive me crazy, like how are these people just walking off the cliff? But that ties into what this new concept of the fact that a lot of these people aren't people. They're assets of the system. Some are benign, and some are more Mr. Smith-like. You know, they're unreasonable in their defense of the system. But for the most part, they're just, most of the people are just going to go along to go along. And what that does, and it made me think about this, I saw this guy with got a backpack on, and it was funny. It said, assholes live forever. I was like, yeah, it's funny. I think, well, the good people always die young. They always say that. And, why does God take the good people? Well, because the good people wouldn't help the test. It wouldn't make the test as much of a challenge as it needs to be. You need to be tested. And the assholes are going to test you, not the nice people. So it makes sense to me. There's about 500 different ways I could go with this. But I think that about covers the simple idea. This ability to create is not in any way some kind of superpower. So it would be to normies, you know, if you were to consider like the average person, they'd see it as a superpower or some sort of ability, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It's not. Let me follow here. Yeah. So they want that ability. Because they don't have it. They can't create. You know, evil cannot create. Never has been able to, never will. So they're making a big grab. And I believe that's what this is all about, ultimately. I had something else I wanted to get to, but whatever. I'm going to take a little bit of a walk up the road here and go back and clean the house with it. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys.